Yeah. We live on Facebook. So, just waiting for about a minute for some people to come on in. Excuse me, I'm burping. Just waiting for about 1 minute for some people to come in and get this reality. So I'm telling people, 2021 is a year of big feelings. We're remodeling it all. Okay? So yeah, come on up in here. And we having class for about 15 minutes tonight. We having a 15-minute class. It might be 10 minutes. This don't take no long time. You know Chief X coming to you with the common sense science. Everybody should invest in a map. Get you a globe and sit it on your desk or whatever. But people need to invest in a map when talking history, because a map gives you mental clarity. Like, you can talk about history and point out places and things like that. But sometimes if you're just not looking at a map, you misunderstand. We bringing out the geography and the map today. And we're going to break this down. And people should have another device with them so they can kind of Google a question when I ask. So, you know, Chief X is here to kick some truth. I'm not here to play games or I don't have no agenda, you know. Chief X usually always say he's a lone ranger. So I don't do the clicks and shit like that. And I'm free to speak the truth. I don't have no agenda. I ain't trying to hold on to no falsehoods or anything like that. I just want people to be informed because I'm a strict truth seeker. Even if it goes against something I previously believed, I'm a strict truth seeker. Hey, Latrice Thomas, I'm going to bring it for you. So we got about 10 people up in here. People can catch on later. But I'm about to give you some common sense science. And I'm holding my tablet, so it may be a little shaky as I talk, because I got to point and show people. Now, let's just go ahead and get started, right? Here we have the map of the world, right? Brazil, United States, Canada, Russia. You know, this is considered Europe. This is Asia, you know, Australia down here. Like when somebody uses the term Aboriginal, they're talking about the original Australians who migrated out. Humans migrated out of Africa around 70K years ago, and just took the route and migrated out of Africa. What is it? 20,000 years later, not right away. 20,000 years later, people ended up in Australia here, right? And, you know, you have the Tasmanian people in Australia. Those are people who are called Aboriginal people. The Tasmanian people, sometimes Solomon Islanders, Australia, the original people who landed in Australia after the Out of Africa theory are Aboriginal people. Nobody else has the Aboriginal title except these people around here. So when you hear people in the conscious community say Aboriginal, they're using it way out of context. They don't know what Aboriginal means. And who is an Aboriginal? Africans are not Aboriginal people. Okay? White folk, Asian folk, Japanese folk, Chinese folk are not Aboriginal people. The only Aboriginal people are original Australians and people around the islands next to it. Okay? That's what an Aboriginal is. Look it up if you're confused. Okay, now let me get back to Egypt. Right? I just wanted to let people know that because people be saying Aboriginal and don't even know what the fuck an Aboriginal is. Okay, so I hope I'm clear and everybody can hear me. We're going to break this down. Okay, I'm holding my tablet, so bear with me if it's too shaky, but we're going to make it plain. Now, anyone, let me just say this first. This is Africa. This is West Africa. This is South Africa. This is East Africa. This is North Africa. So when someone says an African civilization, don't always think of yourself or your people, because that's a tricky statement. If people are not clear, if you say North Africa, that's different than saying West Africa. Africa is a continent, not a country. There are 54 countries in Africa. Okay? Just follow me. I'm gonna make this real fucking simple. There are 54 countries in Africa. Okay? So, if you look up, and let's just say, North Africa is considered, make some clarity, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. That is North Africa. African Americans descend from West Africans. Right? Morocco is North Africa. Algeria, North Africa. Libya, North Africa. Egypt, North Africa. We're West Africans. Now, when you look up how long have North Africans been in North Africa and who are North Africans, because we're not that. And you will see, and don't believe me, all you got to do is look up this stuff. It's fucking simple. North Africa is mainly made up of Berber people, which their proper name is the Amazigh people. Later on, Arabs came and mixed with them and have religion with them and influenced them. And most Berber people or North African people are Muslim today because of the Arabs. But the indigenous, listen to my words, the indigenous people of North Africa, who've been there for 13,000 years at least, are the Amazigh people, what we call Berber people. So, when someone says, oh, this was an African civilization, yeah, these pale people, these Berber people, these Amazigh people are Africans. It's just not black Africa, what we would consider in today's time what we call black Africa. This is never has been, never was black Africa. Black Africa is below the Sahara Desert right here, goes across here. And it acted as a natural barrier. So sub-Saharan, sub meaning under. Sub-Saharan Africa is black Africa, all down here and below. Below North Africa is sub-Saharan Africa, meaning under the Sahara Desert that goes across here. Dry ass land. Are you following me? Okay. So, you don't have to believe me. Just look up who are the indigenous people of Algeria. Who are the indigenous people of Morocco? Who are the indigenous people of Libya? Who are the indigenous people of Egypt? Okay? Now, Sudan would be East Africa, and some parts they would say North Africa. But Sudan, which is East Africa, would be considered Black Africa. Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Morocco is not Black Africa. There are other races in Africa that are indigenous to Africa. Black people are not just only people indigenous to Africa. Now, when I say indigenous, what I mean is like the Native American is indigenous to the Americas and the Caribbeans. Because when the Native American came in, they come from East Asian stock. This is Asia. This is East Asia. They come from East. So the Native American, when they came and populated America, let's just stretch it out to 15,000 years ago. But universally, they say 14,000, even 13,000. But since I don't want people wiggling, I'm just going to say 15,000. They came through up here, Russia, and then Alaska's right here, and they call it the Bering Straits. It ended up over here, Alaska, next to Russia's over here. But it's a round map world. So the Native American came through here. Only, and all this was empty. This is called the Western Hemisphere. It was barren and empty 15,000 years ago. That's why they call it what? The New World. It was new to the people on the Eastern Hemisphere. Nobody was here until the Native American came in there, the East Asian DNA type, through Alaska and the Bering Strait, like Alaska, the Inuit, those Eskimos. And they came here down through Canada, into the United States, on down to Mexico, and on down to the islands in Brazil. The Native American are indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. And when I say indigenous, all you have to do is think about it like this. Meaning, a people who came to a land or originated in a land and they set up camp there. And their culture was born. A people who set up camp in a place and their culture begins to be born there. That's what an indigenous person is. Okay? So this is why when I used to debunk all the blacks saying you ain't never been there, we ain't know, they know Africans didn't get here until a slave ship brought them there. This is why when you look at all the uncontacted tribes that were found in the Brazil and the Amazon, when you see all the uncontacted tribes that people recently find, they look like the Native American. They come up out them Amazon jungles with that straight hair. You will never ever find a nappy-headed black person originating in these lands or coming out these Amazon jungles. Because we weren't there and didn't come there until a slave ship brought us to the Americas and into Brazil and to the Caribbeans. Okay? Black people didn't come from here. We came from here. Sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, now back to the Egypt thing. I just wanted to give you that understanding so you can understand. Like, I also tell people, and people thought I was tripping, but nobody. I said West Africans and even the Egyptians, no matter how advanced you thought they were, the Egyptians, the West Africans, South Africans, they didn't even know that it was a Western Hemisphere. Yeah. Egyptians had no idea These Egyptians had no idea that there was a Western Hemisphere. These West Africans had no idea that there was a Western Hemisphere. This was empty. Now, why do you say it was empty, Chief X? Because when you're into science, you will learn that there was an ice age. Don't believe me, look it up. It's called the Laurentine Ice Age, or they call it the Laurentine Ice Sheet. And the Laurentine Ice Sheet covered Canada and half of North America. The fuck is calling me? Okay. So the Laurentine Ice Sheet covered Canada and half of North America 15,000 years ago. So wasn't nobody there. They wasn't living on no ice sheet. It was cold as hell. Okay? When the ice began to melt, the Laurentine Ice Sheet, look up Laurentine Ice Age, Laurentine Ice Sheet. Chief X don't have to lie to you. I'm keeping it real. When the ice began to melt in that ice age, then that's when the Native American, the East Asian DNA type came in through the Bering Straits and came on down when it melted. Before that, this shit was empty as fuck. Just a fact. Nobody was over here. No humans were hanging over here. Now, let's get back to Egypt. This is Egypt, which is North Africa. In general, they differ in skin tone. In general, all these people are basically Amazigh or Berber. Then they became mixed up with the Arab later on, when the Arabs began to enter Africa around 600. Okay? So, this is the Mediterranean Sea. So when I say these are Mediterranean people, I'm talking about because it's by the Mediterranean Sea. It's not Black Africa. It never was. Now, like Morocco, I told people, West Africans and people didn't give a fuck about no Morocco. Because it was a mountainous area and ugly. These people came in later and inhabited Morocco. But black folk wasn't there ever. Until modern times. Like Morocco today is 98% Amazigh, Berber. You mean you got about 2% black people up there in modern times? We didn't inhabit this. This was not Black Africa ever. Algeria was not Black Africa ever. Libya was not Black Africa ever. Egypt was not Black Africa ever. Below the Sahara was. Now, the Sahara has always been a natural border and barrier for people. People wasn't crossing here in times. When I went to Ghana, it was forest people. People didn't have horses and cars and shit like that. 1,000 years ago, these people had no clue that it was even pyramids over here. Don't let nobody tell you any different than this. Listen to what Chief X is saying. 1,000 years ago, these people had no fucking clue that there were some pyramids here. They didn't travel across this dry-ass Sahara. It was a natural barrier. When people are talking about traveling, and they talking about people migrating. Not traveling, oh, I'm going to go visit such and such. Let me just walk. No, that was not happening. These people stayed put. And their camp was set up here. Wasn't nobody crossing over here. Modern times, people start crossing Sahara. You had nomad people crossing the Sahara. Now, there may have been some black people who passed through these areas, but they're not indigenous, meaning they didn't set up camp and live here, and their culture wasn't born here. The Amazigh people, the Berbers' culture is born here. That's why they're indigenous. I don't have to lie. Just look up who's indigenous to Algeria. Who's indigenous to Libya? Who's indigenous to Morocco? Who's indigenous to Egypt? The Amazigh people. Right? Now, what you have here in this northern part of Egypt, guess where the pyramids and the Sphinx is? It's close to Cairo. You see Cairo? That's northern Egypt. Black Africans was here in Sudan, which they call Nubians today, but their name is really Cushites, I learned recently. Or you could just say Sudanese or Cushites. But a lot of people know it as Nubia. It was Black Africa here. Okay? Now, the reason why they have pyramids in Kush, or Nubia, or Sudan, whatever the fuck you want to call it, I'm not tripping on the name. Just get my point. The reason they had pyramids here, because these Black Africans were lucky and privileged enough to be able to go up and down this Nile River. The biggest river. They were able to go up and down this Nile River and meet and trade and do business with North Africans, Berbers and Amazigh, and mixed today with Arab. So they were privileged to trade, learn from, be influenced by North Africans. Okay? So these are Mediterranean people. The Mediterranean Sea. So what you had in ancient times was people from all over these areas congregating up here in North Africa and North Egypt. South Egypt, North Egypt. Okay? So that's why they say the Levant, the Near East, and Berber people, when they came on down and migrated on down, they were there. Okay? That's why the pyramids and the Sphinx is in North Egypt. Black people didn't build the pyramid and Sphinx. Another people did. So we got to stop letting these Afrocentrics and people who are in their feelings revise history. This revision of history started decades ago. From Sheikh Anta Diop to Dr. Ben, on down the line to young Pharaoh. Because a lot of our master teachers taught us that we built the pyramids and we are the ancient Egyptians. Walter Williams used to make videos. We got to have Egypt. We got to claim Egypt. So everybody was in a fight to claim Egypt. Even at times, some whites. But a lot of whites, because it's a lot of Caucasian DNA up in here. From people who came around up in here. Okay? So to Egyptians and to the Amazigh people, they considered Sudan or Cushites or Nubians to be an enemy at times. They considered Asiatics above them sometimes to be enemies. Nubians slash Cushites slash Sudanese are not the ancient Egyptians. Don't let people confuse you about that. These are a different people than these people. These Mediterranean people were melanated, but not considered black. I've shown that on my Facebook page today. Okay? So, we have to stop this culture theft and being culture vultures and stealing other people's culture. These people had no idea pyramids were up here 1,000 years ago. People start learning this thing through modern times and thing, when people begin to move around and travel and stuff. These people in ancient times didn't know it was a Western Hemisphere. It's just what it is. Because when people were traveling and migrating, they travel and migrate around here, all down to Australia. When they hit this point, it's fucking ice and cold up here. They didn't migrate there. That's why it took them 20,000 years to get here. So the Australian Aboriginals have been there 50,000 years. Landing there 20,000 years later after leaving out of Africa. So when you leave out of Africa, it's 70K years ago, what they did was they met other, what you call archaic humans, like Homo Neanderthals were out here when people came up out of Africa. They ran into archaic humans called Homo Neanderthals. You have archaic humans called Homo erectus. These are Homo Neanderthals were here. Homo erectus was before Homo Neanderthals. We're called Homo sapiens. Homo means human. So Neanderthals were human. They were just archaic humans. So when people left out of Africa, approximately, let's say 75,000 years ago, they met with archaic humans and admixed. And over thousands and tens of thousands of years of admixing and stuff, people developed, different races developed. Genetic structure changed. You had paler people. People had different diets then than they had here. And that's the process of evolution. And different races are born through mixing, migrating to different areas, eating different foods, environmental factors and things like that, cold areas, things like that. And people just change their phenotypes and features and things like that. So when they met with archaic humans like Neanderthals and admixed, they were around. So that's why the people, when they landed in Australia, the Aboriginals, that's why I like Tasmanian people. Have you ever took a look at them? They have a lot of archaic features, their face and things like that. Okay? That's why they call them Aboriginal. So these people had, like Tasmanian people and Aboriginal people, have more Neanderthal DNA in them than people here. Because when they left out of here, they admixed. These people were kind of still hanging around here, right? So even Africa, we're not original people now. Everybody on Earth right now is a mutation. We're all mutants. These people would be the closest thing to the original over here. So people will act like, oh, we were just kicking it and just moving around and communicating with. No, people were staying stagnant and they stayed here. It was a Sahara Desert here, and that's called a natural barrier. Didn't nobody get in no car or hop on no damn horse or no bicycle and ride and visit and kick it and hang out and smoke a joint with each other and drink beers together. They didn't know each other. West Africans have no relationship to ancient Egypt and the ancient Egyptians. Not at all. Get it out your mind. I'm tired of people lying about this shit and trying to fit themselves in history so they can feel sexier. No, we West Central Africans. The Bantu expansion was from West Africa, all down into here. The Bantu expansion didn't go up here. It went from like West Africa all down to here. It didn't go up there. Guess why? The fucking Sahara. The damn Sahara Desert. Okay? These are not our people. Even Nubians or Cushites or Sudanese, whatever you want to call them, are not our people. They're just a different black people. It's like, I always make this analogy. Where am I at? Let me just show you. Just like a Mexican lady and a Filipino lady do not claim to be the same people just because they've both got black straight hair and a similar skin tone. Nobody does that but African Americans. No other race claim to be each other because they have similar hair and similar skin tone. But we have the confusion because we were brought here on a slave boat and we lost a lot of knowledge of our ancestors and where we came from, and we have an identity issue. So we run around today in the conscious community stealing everybody's identity. Niggas claiming to be the Native American. Niggas out here claiming to be the original Chinese and got fake ass pictures of fucking what them people? Not Mongolian, I don't want to say, Tibetan people wearing wigs, and they sharing pictures around social media talking about, look at these ancient Chinese. The original Chinese was black. Look at their hair. No, those are fucking wigs. And they're Tibetan people. You ain't no damn original Chinese. People, see, in people's mind, people, this is how unscientific a lot of people in the conscious community are. In their minds, they think Chinese were light-skinned right now, and that they used to be dark-skinned because they got whitewashed and mixed with Europeans and shit. Chinese and Japanese people don't have no motherfucking European DNA like that. Your black ass do, though. Because you mixed with Europeans during the slave era, slavery times. These Chinese and Japanese people ain't got no European DNA. They're not lighter because of some whitewashing. Y'all need history book in science classes bad. I told you, we're remodeling the entire conscious community. 2021, people going to be in their feelings. I'm bringing the pain because I don't give a fuck. I'm sick of the bullshit. Niggas going to be crying. You see them on my timeline, on my page, crying now. Wiggling. Shaka Amos, we've been Facebook friends and cool with each other for a long time. Shaka Amos up out of New York. So sometimes I share my posts in all kind of groups. I was killing them people in his groups. They was shaking in their boots. Shaka Amos is shaking in his boots right now because in his group, the Nile Valley Civilization group, I shared some things that just totally go against what they've been learning in all their life. Shaka Amos blocked me from the damn group. I'm not even a member of the group no more. I'm talking niggas are shaking in their boats. Chief X is coming. We're shutting all the bullshit down, and I'm bringing you guys your mind, your body, and your soul back to West Africa, where you belong and where you need to be into. If you take a vacation, what the fuck is you going to go to Egypt for? And help these Arabs in Berber's economy when they doing bad over here. I told myself, if I ever take a vacation, I'm not going to no damn Egypt. I'm going to where my ancestors were taken from. And I'm visiting my people, and I'm going to help their economy. People never want to go. People going all over the places. People leaving and going to fucking Egypt. and going to the fucking Caribbeans, which is nothing but a European vacation spot the Europeans built up. So when you go to Jamaica and all them islands and thinking you just helping the European economy. They own all them motherfucking resorts and shit. When I went to Ghana, I said I'm going. We went to the orphanage there. I went to 4 or 5 different museums. I toured the rainforest. I seen my people, and I was happy. I can't wait to go back. I went to that orphanage and donated money to them kids. Them kids had horrible bathrooms. The plumbing was horrible. And I sat there and cried. And every time I think about it, I tear up. I tear up. I tear up when I think about it, that orphanage. Them kids had no plumbing system. The bathroom smelled bad. And I didn't see how they do it. I donated my money and I helped. The Ghanaian government ain't giving out no food stamps. They don't provide funding for these kids. They get it through philanthropy. And people like us who go visit and go back home. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to Egypt or even studying Egypt and the culture and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fine to study all cultures around the world, but just stop trying to claim that as you. That's where you go wrong. I still study Egypt today. But once you get to the point where you saying that's you and your people, and the ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids and stuff were black people, that's when you go wrong. But it's fine to learn metadata, linguistics, the history of all that. That's all fine. I'm not discouraging that. You're supposed to study it all. Just stop claiming what's not yours, is my point. Don't do that. I just sat up here and broke down. Let me wipe. Yeah. Don't do that. So, you don't have, you should know now. North Africa is, the indigenous people of North Africa are the Amazigh people, the Berbers. And then came the Arabs who mixed with them. Both of those people, the Amazigh and the Egyptian, the Amazigh and the Berber enslaved sub-Saharan Africans. Them is not your people. They were only lucky to live along the Nile where they can come up here and hang out and visit and mix and shit. So it's a melting pot. Egypt was a melting pot of all this. All this was a melting pot for Egypt. So they're melanated because of mixing. Like, the modern Egyptians today basically are 68% of what the ancient Egyptians was. That's not you. It just isn't. Okay? Morocco is not your land, never was. Algeria is not your land, never was. Libya is not your land, never was. Egypt is not your land, never was. Now, when you get down to here, where you consider what they say southern Egypt or upper Egypt, well, this is actually southern Egypt and upper Egypt, then yeah, it's some blacks there because Sudan is right here. And they were fucking around. Cairo, the pyramids, and the Sphinx is up here in northern Egypt. You guys were down here. You guys are sub-Saharan Africans, which the Sahara Desert prevented you from hanging out over here. Wasn't nobody traveling here and talking and kicking it and having a beer. They wasn't traveling up here and kicking it and having a beer. These forest people in Ghana was there. People didn't move in these times. They didn't move like people think. What people are thinking about, you're talking about migrations. And forced migrations because of weather changes and weather patterns. Sometimes land dried up. Food was barren. And humanity and people migrated to other areas. This shit is not hard if you get a map and look around and think. It's not that hard. The Western Hemisphere, Eastern Hemisphere. Nobody here ever knew about the Western Hemisphere in them times. It was fucking empty. The Laurentine ice sheet prevented people from going up into here. When it melted, then they came down up in here 15,000 years ago. It was empty before that. And they didn't have ships that were capable of crossing over here. Native Americans and Africans, actually the oldest boat known to man was found in Nigeria. Excuse me. Nigeria. And it's a little bitty canoe. Can't no canoe cross this without death. The Portuguese were the people who advanced shipbuilding technology. In about 1390, the Portuguese, I'm sorry, it's not a shot, but the Portuguese advanced shipbuilding technology. Now, these people had ships, not ships, they had little boats and canoes. They had little canoes. In Egypt, they had little, what I call glorified canoes. Because I was in the Navy. We on big old ships. I know about these waters. I know about going through this, excuse me, what we call a Westpac, North Pacific Ocean. When I was in the Navy, I'm stationed in Long Beach. That naval shipyard is closed now. So when I was in the Navy, I'm stationed in Long Beach. And when we go out to sea on a Westpac, it's for 6 months. So we traveled these waters and went over here, and we was hanging out over here. I went to Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, China, Japan, Tokyo, Philippines. I was in all them places. North Pacific. North Pacific. Boats were not able to cross these oceans until the Portuguese advanced shipbuilding technology in about 1390. And this is why when the 1400s came and the late 1400s came, they were able to do mass human trafficking across waters, and the slave trade began. Human trafficking and mass didn't happen crossing oceans until ship technology advanced by the Portuguese. Now they had a ship that can cross large body oceans. Before that, the Egyptians way over here had no clue what was over here. What they did was they had little boats that were able to ride up and down the Nile, or in a sea or a lake that is not as rough waters as these. I was going through rough waters in a storm one time in the Navy. The ship is going like this for 3 days straight, 45-degree turns. We sleeping with our arms and legs flattened out. The whole kitchen on the ship, plates and shit flying every goddamn where. You had to tie all this shit down. You're not getting up out here in no little canoe. When they advanced shipbuilding technology, then mass trafficking, human trafficking across waters started. Not before then. And these Portuguese and Spaniards and shit came all up into here and got these Africans along the coast. First they did trade and business and check things out and was networking and talking. And then the chiefs, a lot of these village chiefs in West Africa coordinated with these Portuguese and Dutch and shit, and they built them slave castles there. Y'all didn't know they coordinated together? Now, it became a dominating thing, but initially, the slave castles was built by Africans and Europeans together. And they was hustling and making money together. All the gold and shit they was trading. A lot of Ghanaians, they used to call us the Gold Coast. A lot of Ghanaians had slaves before white folk even came over here. And they the one was mining all the gold that they was trading to Europeans. This is just like some real history that people need to know. And it's okay. Get you a map, people, and think and look and understand. See, I changed once I started getting into science, right? I started studying about evolution, and the puzzle began to come together. Once I started studying evolution and migration patterns and things like that, then things start coming to the puzzle start coming together. I said, oh, that's why they look like that. It took them that long to get there out of Africa. This migration pattern. Oh, that's why they're different races. Oh, they mixed with archaic humans named Neanderthals. Oh, then they changed from environmental pressures and different diets and things like that. And, oh, and all start coming together. But if you're devoid of science and don't understand science, migration, and evolution, all this shit in history will confuse you. Because for years, since 1993, when I jumped off in the Nation of Islam, where I sparked my journey, for years, I was just getting filled with history talk. None of the elders, none of the people was kicking any science like that. Science, they was just strictly kicking and teaching history. So I'm just filled with history. So I said, you know what? I've gotten enough. This is about 6 years ago. I said, well, you know, I'm starting embracing science and trying to get different understandings now. And once I learned about evolution and migration patterns, man, the puzzles start coming together. So you connect the history with the science, and then you can see clearer. I've been going way longer than I wanted to. But I just wanted to give an overview. And that's why I keep this map, right? I keep this map above my desk. And when I'm talking and studying and researching on my computer, I look up at this map and say, oh, okay. I got a globe right here I used to keep on my desk. Maps and globes are very fucking important for visual understanding. Okay? That's how the peopling of the world went down. Out of Africa, 75,000 years ago, mixed with Neanderthals. Environmental pressures and evolution and things go down. People change. Different races come upon the earth. And now here we are with all these different races. Right? So like, you know, people have to understand nobody was here for a long time. It was the ice age, the Laurentine ice sheet. People couldn't get up in here. The Native American came here 15,000 years ago and then populated on down. It's never been your land. That's why they called it the New World. And when Christopher Columbus came here, what year was that? 1492? I don't know. Don't quote me. But he didn't discover it. Well, here's the thing. This is people confused. It's your wording. They never said they were the first people here. They teach you about the pilgrims and them coming here and meeting the Native Americans. So they've never said we're the first person here. They just discovered it. Columbus and them was were the first people to discover it for themselves. Damn, I discovered something. Look. We didn't know about this before. We discovered it. But they're not saying they were the first people there. They already knew people were there. That's why they teach you about the story about the pilgrims. So people take that shit all out of context. Because they're hateful and mad about the past. Didn't no Europeans say they were the first person over in the Western Hemisphere? Never. They just saying they discovered it for them. Hey, look what I discovered. Like, sometimes I can be riding somewhere. Damn, I discovered something. I'm not saying I'm the first person. I just discovered this. Personally for me. Look what I found. You know what I'm saying? So, people, when you take a vacation, take your next vacation here. To where your people were from and brought to America from. We are West Central Africans. Now, to be clear, people, I took my DNA test. I'm like 86% West African. And I have about 5% Central African. But understand this. A lot of slaves that went to Brazil came from Angola and Central Africa, right? But most of us in the United States and the Caribbeans and things like that, we came from West Africa. And some came from Central Africa too. But the majority of people who came from Central Africa went to Brazil. So the Afro-Brazilian population has more Central African DNA than West African DNA. Although there's still West African DNA here and Central African. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So I'm about to end this. I think I was thorough enough and gave an understanding, but we are not the ancient Egyptians. We're not related to them. Those were another people, and it wasn't Black Africa. Black Africa is down here in Sudan and lower. We're sub-Saharan Africans. We had nothing to do with the building of the pyramids and the Sphinx. Let it alone. Study it fine, but don't claim it. It's yours. If you just like history and like to study, good, fine. I'm out.